Welcome to the Red State Weekly Briefing. I am your host, Aaron Gardner, and it is Sunday night, and so you are here watching the Red State Weekly Briefing. Thank you all for showing up tonight. Tonight we have on with us, we have Caleb. Well, no, we don't have Caleb. Caleb is somewhere sleeping off a hard weekend at the American Dream Summit. I was hoping he would be able to show up and give us a little wrap-up of how that went, how different speakers were received, but Caleb, he's just a man and he needs rest, I guess. So we don't have Caleb here with us. He may come in a little bit later on in the show. But with us, as always, we do have Thomas the Duke, and we do have Joseph Cunningham along with us tonight. Additionally, we should have a special guest showing up a little bit later on in the show to discuss some Colorado events. Her name is Kelly Maher. She's a good friend and a political operative here in Colorado, and all-around great person, so you should definitely stick around and listen to her. But let me go ahead and break it down real quick for you what we got going on this week. Two main topics that I want to talk about are the advance of ISIS and the fact that our president doesn't have a strategy to deal with them in Iraq and in Syria beyond what he's already doing with airstrikes and limited air supplies to those who are under attack. And then also I want to talk about Governor John Hickenlooper and some things that are going on in the Colorado governor's race that have to deal with death penalty. And basically what's occurred is the governor has made the death penalty a political football that can be tossed about and has then complained about that very fact. But we will get into that a little bit later on the show. First things first, this week we had a couple really interesting reports come out on ISIS. Last weekend, as we talked about with LeDuc and I, we heard Lieutenant General McInerney get on Fox News and basically say that he believes that an attack, 9/11 style threat, an attack is imminent in America. Since then, we've had a couple of different people come out and say some similar things, maybe not with such immediacy as Lieutenant Colonel McInerney or Lieutenant General McInerney, but still nonetheless very eye-opening from the people we're hearing from, whether it be Michael Morrell in the CIA, leaving the CIA, or Mike Rogers in the House. We're hearing a lot of people wonder aloud whether or not the threat from ISIS has grown beyond our control. But what I want to talk about also are reports that we saw come out this week. One from a BuzzFeed article which talked about ISIS being the richest terrorist organization in the world. And I think that's an interesting thing because it actually went into their infrastructure a little bit and what they are and what they aren't and how they operate differently than Al-Qaeda did. So let me start off on that point, on the infrastructure and the differences with ISIS. And let me bring LeDuc and Joe into the discussion here real quick. And Joe, I'm sure you read a lot about ISIS this week in between emails that we've shared with each other and also stuff that's been on RedState. What do you think about this difference between ISIS and Al-Qaeda and what we're seeing here with an increased infrastructure and involvement in ISIS of building an actual bureaucracy out to form this caliphate and keep this movement moving?
Well, when we've seen Al-Qaeda in the past, when they first really kind of popped up on our radar, and as they've grown and changed shape, we've really seen not so much a big organization so far as a network of smaller organizations. And what the difference between what Al-Qaeda was doing and what ISIS is doing is that Al-Qaeda's never tried to unify those networks. Everyone acted independently for the greater goal of extending the faith through force, whereas ISIS says we want our own boundaries and we want to establish a caliphate and we want to attack the West. And what we've seen now is, with the reports of the laptop and other reports, we see that they not only have a greater movement going, but we see an organization, like you said, a bureaucracy, where they are setting up some sort of state, whether it's going to be one that has actual boundaries or one that's still kind of loosely assembled within the boundaries of other countries.
Yeah, you're right. And the establishment of the caliphate, that is one of the core differences that we're talking about here. Al-Qaeda was more than happy to just take the fight in a kind of disconnected way, and not worry about nation states and borders and countries and stuff like that. Whereas ISIS has said, look, we want to actually establish a nation state that we can control, not just in order to control the area that we live in as a means of creating a training ground and a staging place in order to launch offensives, but also as a means to come together against the West. This is basically, to me, that we've been living in a power vacuum for a long time now. Ever since the fall of communism and our triumph there, we've been basically the lone superpower on the earth. And I think ISIS understands that ISIS sees an opportunity to create a superpower of Islam to balance out America. And unfortunately, I think President Obama is giving them every opportunity to take advantage of this. LeDuc, I want to bring you in here as well. Joe mentioned a report which came from Foreign Policy on a laptop that had been found in Syria that belonged to an ISIS member. Now, this ISIS member, what's interesting about this is the headline, the big boom headline, is that there's instructions on how to create a chemical weapon and advice on how to go about doing a chemical attack. Now, what I find interesting about this is this guy in Syria fighting for ISIS, he was actually from Tunisia, and he had actually gone to the universities in Tunisia to study, I believe it was chemistry and physics. And this is another thing about the infrastructure of ISIS that I think people don't understand. They're bringing in the intellectuals in order to advance their goals tactically as far as weapon systems and deployments and stuff like that. And they not only have these people that they're bringing in, but they're also grabbing land and all the resources that come with that land. So I want you to bust in here and tell me what you think about this situation where we have foreigners who are now fighting for ISIS in Syria and Iraq, who have the knowledge to execute and also now have the means to execute, possibly by what they've picked up in treasure and land. Other than it completely filling your shorts and you needing to go to the restroom real quick.
Can you smell that from here?
I can.
That's what I was worried about. Well, if you can, that means the NSA can. Hi, guys. This is absolutely okay. I don't know how, Aaron and I talked about this last week about what we saw Saturday, and then you start reading some stuff and what have you. A lot of the people that I know that follow foreign policy closely, that have connections all throughout and everything, they said the chatter has gone up just exponentially the past 2 weeks. The chatter that we're picking up, other intelligence services are picking up about this and everything. These guys are highly motivated, they're educated, and they believe that they're doing this and they're going to go to heaven. That is extremely hard to stop. You have to be extremely good and lucky each and every time. And it seems that, whatever you want to say about George W. and what they did in Iraq and everything and such, at least it took their eye off the ball for a little bit in terms of that they were so pissed that the infidels were in Iraq doing X, Y, or Z, they lost their focus. Now they're focusing on Western Europe and here. And you saw what David Cameron did on Friday. He took to the podium a day after our president went forward and was like, I don't have a plan. Cameron's like, we've got to get these people. People from Great Britain are joining. They estimate anywhere between 100 to 200 Americans have joined this. We just had 2 Americans die this past week fighting with these guys. This is serious crap because it's not going to take a hell of a lot to basically freeze the American economy and just watch everything go south quickly. And quite frankly, we're not in a position right now with 6 years of Obamanomics to basically take any sort of blow, let alone a huge blow. So it worries the hell out of me that these guys are focused, they're intelligent, and they're willing to die for this cause. No question about it. Al-Qaeda might have been a little bit better with the PR in terms of, Osama would go forward and, he'd make a cute little video about whatever. These guys are like, hey, look, Uncle Charlie's head, we're going to come for you next.
Well, and not only are they more intense with what they're showing and more graphic with what they're doing and showing in their PR is completely different. I mean, the way
Totally.
they've done PR and Twitter and Facebook
Yeah.
and social media is I mean, frankly, it's impressive. This isn't a group of goat herders packed up into a cave hiding from the full force and weight of the United States military. They're out there and they're aggressive and they're gaining land and they're gaining facilities. That's what people don't understand. They're gaining universities and those labs that come with them where they have the ability to go through and maybe look at weaponizing bubonic plague. It's a real threat, and you said the people you're hearing from who are in the know are saying that the chatter is picked up and everything like that. And I feel like the pace and frequency of all this stuff has really picked up in the last year. In a post that I wrote, I quoted a friend who had relayed something kind of privately, listing all the things in the last year, just since Labor Day of last year, that have taken place, and it's overwhelming when you look and see it, everything that has taken place. And now today we're hearing reports that an embassy in Libya was taken over by another group. I think it was ISIS as well. Now this wasn't like a Benghazi style attack. This is a place that an embassy annex, I believe, that we didn't even have any people at anymore since we had gotten out of the area. But still, it's just every day we're seeing something new from ISIS in an advance towards establishing that full-fledged caliphate, which is going to consume not just Iraq and Syria, but potentially could go on and consume the entire Middle East.
If I could add, I wasn't paying attention. I mean, I really wasn't paying attention. I might, the anniversary of September 11th the other year. National security is not my thing, so I trust other people and read their stuff. So you were probably a little bit ahead of the curve if you were talking to people who were on that, because I just wasn't paying attention. Really woke me up with that interview we saw with General McInerney.
Mm-hmm.
But the last week, these guys, it just with everything that I'm hearing, it's terrifying. And the thing that absolutely blows my mind is here we are tomorrow, September 1st. All right? Just this past January, the President of the United States was saying, oh, these guys are JV. They're just putting on the Lakers jerseys and everything and such. If we're that far behind, if the policymakers are that far behind, we're in deep shit. I mean, we are in extreme deep shit, especially if you're saying, you're hearing people or that they've been talking about this for a year. It's very hard to make up ground, and it only takes a couple people to come across that damn border. And the AFP event was down in Dallas there this past weekend, and I was talking to people about, it's like, holy crap, you wouldn't believe just to talk about this, about the people flooding over the border, and that terrifies the hell out of me.
And the border is a big issue in its own right, and I don't want to diminish that at all. But I also want to say, our northern border, and not necessarily a flood of illegals or anything like that coming across, but
right.
there are a lot of more fundamental followers of Islam in Canada who have passports that allow them to freely travel back and forth between Canada and America. So it's not just our southern border, which is a mess in its own right, but it's also everywhere where that radical Islam is. Even like you said, the American fighters. We've all heard of Dearborn, Michigan, which is a area that's predominantly Muslim and predominantly Islam, and some of them are fundamental Islam. And then you have these people who've been coming out of Minnesota, apparently, who have gone to fight for ISIS as well. So we're seeing the radicalization of people all across the world. So whether it's an internal or an external threat that we're facing, to me, it doesn't really matter, because we're fighting an ideological threat that has no actual real borders. We're fighting radical Islam that believes that they must establish a caliphate, they must perpetrate jihad against the infidel, and the infidel must be destroyed. So it's not shocking at all to see this stuff happening when you consider the fact of where it's coming from. But it is shocking to all of this because we don't like seeing this stuff, and we wanted a peaceful world. And for the president to come out and say things like, "Oh, well, the world's always been messy. It's just people notice it now more because of social media." Well, saying something like that and then going out and hitting your tee shot is going to piss people off.
Aaron,
you can't go and say that the world's always been messy. Let me go play golf.
Oh, come on, that's uncalled for. He needs to play golf. One of our listeners just commented, and it's true. Unfortunately, though, it hurts. ISIS is better at social media than the Republicans.
It's true.
Ow.
That is unfortunate.
That is kind of
now,
painful.
Joe.
Yeah.
Joe, I know you're always on social media. You're on Facebook and Twitter all the time.
I'm looking at Twitter right now.
You're on Twitter right now. See, I'm trying to do a show, and I can't manage to do a show and do Twitter at the same time. That's why I got great people like Joe around. But Joe, this last week, some of the stuff that general mood on Twitter on ISIS and national policy, or foreign policy and national security. What sort of mood did you see out there in this last week after the president's oh-so-calming statements that we had no strategy?
You saw a bunch of people on the left and the right just kind of flip their wig on the fact that he would actually go out there and say, "Hey, we don't have a strategy. I am sitting here behind my own computer, behind my own phone on Twitter, and I'm like, okay, I can come up with 3 ideas right now, and you don't have anything." I really hope that while he's out on the golf course, the people at the Pentagon are doing their jobs, which I'm assuming they are. People at the Pentagon are doing their jobs and actually figuring out a strategy, and, cell reception on the golf course might be a little bad, and they just hadn't been able to reach him or, text him saying, "Hey, we got an idea." I mean, he went back out on the golf course today, I think. And he was back out there again, and I think the worst part, you could tell he made a serious mistake after he said we don't have a strategy, because not only did Twitter explode, but actually his little minions in press went out to, they ran to a Wolf Blitzer's show and said, "Hey, we want to issue kind of a correction there, if you guys don't mind." And CNN kindly let them on, and I think everybody kind of saw. Aaron Blake at the Washington Post had a great piece on the optics of this, and the optics aren't good in this situation for the president.
No.
But he doesn't seem to care, is kind of the thing. He's like, "Yeah, this kind of looks bad. Whatever, another 18 holes. Let's go."
Well, something that I wanted to point out. I think it was dumb of him to say we don't have a plan. But I think that's also an absolute lie. I think the military always has plans. The military has contingency plans drawn up on so many different scenarios all the time. They're always going through and updating these scenarios in the different regions that they have. So for him to even say that we don't have a plan, that was a lie. In my perspective. Now, there may not be any plans that he likes, because a lot of these plans are going to require boots on the ground type of initiatives to take on this global this caliphate that is trying to become a global push. And that's something that a lot of people don't want to hear. A lot of people on the left and the right, after years and years of war in Afghanistan and Iraq, for whatever reasons, we're a war-weary nation, so to speak, and people don't want to hear that it's actually going to take the initiative and the lives of good men to stand up against evil, to push it back and beat it down. And like George Bush said a long time ago, when we first entered into the global war on terror, this is a generational war, and we need to be willing to understand that and engage it with that understanding. Now, Thomas, I know you're a little bit more libertarian, and you're a little bit more of the don't go to war if we don't have to go to war type of people. Well, you're a little more libertarian. And
I am libertarian. You're right.
More anti, war than I am, I'd say.
Well, okay, but basically, look, you definitely have to have a plan. You have to have a plan. That's what I think I prefaced when I just went on my mini rant there a minute ago and said you could say whatever you want about the Iraq War. Did we take our eye off the ball? Afghanistan, fine, whatever. In hindsight, there were no weapons of mass destruction. unless you count the ones that went over to Syria, and all of a sudden, Bashar Assad all of a sudden has weapons of mass destruction. When the UN, everybody never knew he had a damn thing. So where did these come from?
Let me make one point on that. Let me make one point on that. The whole weapons of mass destruction thing is like this, okay? If we said we were going over there looking for a cake, and we found flour, eggs, milk, water, and all the ingredients to make a cake, but we didn't find a cake that had come out of the oven, we wouldn't be having this discussion. We'd all agree that the ingredients were there to make a cake. Well, the same applies to WMDs. The people who, and this is just a personal pet peeve of mine, the people who complain about the WMDs, they had all the ingredients there to make everything that they needed. They just hadn't put it all together yet and pulled it out of the oven. So with that said, let me go ahead and let you make your point.
They had it. You go and talk to anybody in the Kurdish towns that got gassed in 1991, they will beat the living shit out of you, and excuse the French, if you tell them that Saddam did not have weapons of mass destruction. They will thump you because thousands of their friends and relatives were gassed. Okay, they had weapons of mass destruction. Do people automatically just dismantle? The only time I've ever seen this was when we actually defeated anybody in like World War II, or Muammar Gaddafi, because he was sick of dressing up in dresses thinking Reagan was still bombing him while he was in the throes of dementia. So that's the only time I've ever seen that. So basically Saddam had it. He may have dismantled some for show. He may have sold some off. Whatever he did, he had them at one point because the Kurds were gassed. That's it. What I mean about with going with the guys being over there, you can have a legitimate argument, I think, about whether or not we should have put blood and treasure over there, right? But you can't dispute this, I think, if you're honest. And I'm a libertarian, which means by default I'm honest. The guys who were over in Iraq had targets on their backs. Okay, the third most holy site in Islam is in Iraq. These people, these radical idiots, went bonsai that the Americans were actually occupying land that the third most holy site in Islam was stationed in. They took their eye off of attacking here again and other targets in Western Europe, although they did get Britain the one time. They took their eye off of that to concentrate on that. So, listen, if the very least what those men and women who honorably sign up to serve this country's military, you know what they're doing? They're defending you, which means they're putting a target on their back. And that, at least in that stance, I think it's like, well, you could say that the whole issue of going in was maybe incorrect or what have you, but the end result was that these bastards were so focused on getting us out of there that it was worth having us over there. Now, what's happened with us pulling out and everything and such, that's a totally different debate. But you're right, Aaron. We're going to have to put boots on the ground again to wipe these bastards off the face, because they're not going to go away just by going, just give us some money. They're well-funded, they're educated, and they are willing to die for their cause. And that is a recipe for absolute disaster.
Well, and let me give a short appeal to my libertarian brothers out there who are weary of. I would much rather we put boots on the ground over there and engage over there than have to be more restrictive and lose more liberties here in the United States. I would hate to have it come to having our modes of transportation limited, our ability to travel, and all of that because of the fear of us coming in and attacking us. I would much rather engage overseas and knock them out and go back to living a life where, we can pretty much not have to live under the premise of see something, say something.
Living La Vida Loca, that's what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, Joe, I don't know if you've ever even lived a life outside of a 9/11 construct with the Patriot Act and everything like that. What do you think about this? You're the millennial in the group. You're probably representative most of the... I know, you're the little baby. You're probably representative most of those who wouldn't want us to put boots on the ground. So let me put the question to you. What do you think?
Well, first of all, in my need psychologically for there to be a much smarter administration than perhaps we have. Going back to the president not having a plan, I'm hoping deep down in my heart that what he meant was, we have a plan, but I don't want to say it out loud because I don't want them to hear it. I'm sure there's some kind of call from the Pentagon saying, "Hey, we got something. Don't leak this, like you guys have been wanting to leak some of our other plans," because that's what the administration likes to do, is talk about all their successes. But going to putting actual boots on the ground. Admittedly, 9/11 happened. I was like 12 or 13, and yeah, a third war in my lifetime where we have a long extended stay in the Middle East probably is not ideal, but at the same time, we've kind of let things get to the point where we're going to have to, at some point, if something good can come out of this situation, because there's a general rule called the Pottery Barn rule, and we haven't followed that yet. We were in the middle of following it before we withdrew troops from the Middle East, in trying to fix what we broke, but we just kind of up and left according to the president's wishes. And so we left things broken, and now because we left things broken, things are more broken, and so we're going to have to go up and clean up a bigger mess now. And so whether or not I like war is beyond the point. We're going to have to put boots on the ground at some point in order to fix the mess that is now brewing in Iraq and the area surrounding it.
And see, that's why he is on the front page of RedState.com right there. That sort of insightful analysis from a millennial. You don't get that everywhere, guys. I'm just letting you know.
Did you see that?
Not that many.
Did you see that white, frightful face over Joe's right shoulder there?
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, you see that? It just laid on the couch and it's been staring into the camera watching us, and I'm like, oh, that is NSA kitty cat all day.
Oh yeah, it's listening.
There's a reason my cat is. There's a reason my cat's named Pandemonium.
There you are.
Well, okay, so let me go ahead and recap here for a little bit. We're about 30 minutes into the show. We've been talking about ISIS for a while. We talked about the warnings coming from different groups and different people that ISIS is moving quicker and pushing towards goals of trying to make attacks against the states. We've talked about the fact that they're much more built up in their bureaucracy and their infrastructure, much more so than Al-Qaeda ever was. We've talked about the different goals that they have, and we've talked about the land that they've taken and the treasures they've taken. One thing we've kind of talked about, but we haven't specifically said outright, is this ISIS. And I want people to understand this and know this. This ISIS is something that we're gonna have to all accept as a reality. It being there is something that needs to be addressed. It's not something that we can appease. It's not something that we will be able to say, oh, in 20 years, look, they've changed over to a capitalist system and they're not a threat to our system, and glasnost within the Muslim, that's not coming. That's not what it is. This evil empire isn't going to go away through capitalism and stuff like that. This is something that is actually going to be a hot war that will need to be addressed. So I'm going to leave it there at that and break away from that now. And now I'm going to talk about something domestic. And we're going to talk, and this is actually kind of interesting that we're talking about ISIS, which freely goes about and decapitates people, and now we're going to talk about a governor in Colorado and the death penalty. So somehow, oddly, these are going to be aligned today. But let me give you a little background on what's going on in Colorado. Years back, almost, I guess 20 years ago, there was a mass murder here in Colorado. It was one of the first of the big mass shootings. It was in a Chuck E. Cheese, and it was perpetrated by a guy named Nathan Dunlap. Nathan Dunlap has been convicted to death. We still have the death penalty here in Colorado, and it's used in some cases. He's been convicted, and he has been going through the appeal process for the last 15 years, basically, after his conviction. And he finally has run out of rope. Well, he had finally run out of rope earlier this year. And Governor Hickenlooper, in all his wisdom, decided that what he was going to do was go ahead and give this guy a temporary, what's a little-known idea within our Colorado Constitution. Most places you can either give him a reprieve or let him go ahead and go through the death penalty, provide him clemency or not. Well, he found a way to give a temporary reprieve where either he would be able to make the decision after the election or the next governor would be able to make the decision after election. Now, this happened back in the spring, and since then what has happened is it was found out by a group called Complete Colorado that Governor Hickenlooper taped a segment for a CNN documentary on the death penalty. And in this segment, this segment isn't scheduled to air until late September, I believe. But Hickenlooper in this segment basically said that if the death penalty, and specifically Nathan Dunlap's case, becomes a political football in, and he'll go ahead and give clemency to Dunlap after the election if he loses, taking away any chance for the future governor to act upon the wishes of the people of Colorado. So it's a pretty messed up situation when you have a governor come out and do this, especially when this same governor pushed forward restrictive gun control laws that were not needed and have been ineffective since they were passed here in Colorado to punish the people for other shooting sprees that have happened here in Colorado. This guy, and when he ran in 2010, he came out and said that he was for the death penalty in the most extreme cases. Well, Nathan Dunlap killed a bunch of people. I mean, he killed a bunch of people, coworkers and people at Chuck E. Cheese. One of them was a 17-year-old girl. One of them was a 19-year-old girl. It was really bad, and it was set the tone going forward for the different things that happened here, Columbine and everything else that has happened here, Aurora and whatnot. So it's really messed up that this governor went ahead and did this and played this the way he did. First, to give him a temporary reprieve and distance himself from having to make an actual decision between life and death, and then to come out on a CNN segment that isn't even being aired until later and say that he'll basically use it as a means to say, hey, either vote for me or I let this killer go with clemency. So I don't know if either of you have any specific hard views on the death penalty. So I'm just going to kind of just kick it to you and ask you what you think of this situation. And by the way, I was going to have Kelly Maher on right now to talk about this, but her Wi-Fi and her power died, so she's not able to get on to the show tonight.
Nice, but Governor Hickenlooper.
So, okay, you spoke up, so let me go to you first, LeDuc, and ask you, what do you think about this, and what do you think about the business of claiming that you don't want it to be a political football while actively making it a political football? What do you think about this? How's that going to fly?
That's idiotic. It sounds like you have a governor out there that mirrored the one that I had for 8 years under Jennifer Granholm. I mean, just absolutely just all over the place ideologically, and would use political expediency, on certain things to it just gums it up. I am not for the death penalty. I am not pro-death penalty. I had a conversion many years ago on this. I'm pro-life all the way through, so I don't agree with the state taking the life of anybody, no matter what heinous crime they've committed. You put them behind bars, and you end it with that. This guy should not be shown clemency at all. He murdered one person. You are done for the rest of your life. You're going to be a guest of the citizens of your state, and I hope you have fun with it.
Well, clemency, just to make it clear, clemency means he stays in jail, but he doesn't have to die.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood that. Yeah, so he stays in jail. Okay, yeah, I thought, and the reason I got confused on that, I apologize. The guy who killed John Lennon just came up for parole again. He's coming up for parole every 2 years, and in New York, they have this idiotic system that somehow, if you murder somebody in cold blood, you after 20 years can come up for parole. What? I mean, that's just moronic.
Well, and and to your point about the death penalty, I'm conflicted myself. In certain things, I think the death penalty is an appropriate punishment for what happens. In this case, I kind of think that's true. What I have a problem with as far as the death penalty goes is the appeal system and the process that takes 30, 40 years to go through and run through, and all that while the parents, the families of the victims, those who survived, they're all waiting for justice. No matter what it is, they're waiting for justice. Things aren't settled yet, and this guy's still appealing not only whether or not he'll get the death penalty, but whether or not he should even be in prison. So to me, no matter which way you fall on this, it needs to be a quick and speedy process, and these long-term appeals are just awful, and they just drag out the pain and misery for the families involved.
There's no question about that. There's no question at all. I butt heads with a lot of my friends who basically are, they're pro-life with anti-abortion, but then they're not on this, and it makes me, it really does. In fact, I'm clamming up right now. If you take a look, it makes me nervous when the state can do anything in terms of life or death, and if they screw up one time, they've done it in your name. So there have been innocent people put to death, and they did it in your name. And so
I understand that completely, and I mean, honestly, the death penalty as a whole, I mean, you really have to take it and think about it, and I'm pro-life, and as far as the death penalty goes, I believe that there are things that deserve, if I'm just talking as a man, there are things that deserve the penalty of death. If someone were to come and molest my child, I would want them to die. I would think that would be a just penalty for them molesting my child and stealing their innocence. Now, I can't ever think, and I understand where you're coming from on this, but I can't ever think, even in cases where a certain percentage, probably less than 1%, I would say, die unjustly because they were actually innocent, I still can't bring myself to believe that it's an equivalent of taking an innocent, blameless baby and killing it. So, I understand where you're coming from with the conflict, but it's hard for me. And what's especially hard for me is when I see the appeal process and the long-term damage that's done with that, and the fact that it does end up allowing politics to enter into it so often and really take it down a path that it shouldn't be taken down. We have judges, we have evidence, we have prosecutors, we have all these things, and we have jurors for a reason. And at a certain point, if we don't trust certain parts of the system to work as they should, the parts that they're specifically delegated to really have, then we're just picking it away all the way to the end. And I'm just not sure where that ends up. Joe, I want to bring you in on this as well. What's your opinion on the death penalty and beyond the death penalty, the politics involved with this?
As far as the similarity to pro-life and being but being for the death penalty, if we're basing the pro-life deal on religious background, we can't forget that there is actually biblical code that justifies the death penalty. So I think we can balance that out. But as far as giving the state the power to choose life or death, I think we should hold a healthy bit of skepticism in regard to that. Now, as far as the good governor goes, and I say that with a little bit of sarcasm in my voice, all I can really say is if you don't want something to be made political hay of, I would not suggest you do that at any point in your career either, because you're going to be called out on it. As far as this case goes, again, I'm kind of on the fence too, with regard to the death penalty. This guy should be made to suffer for what he's done, and whether it's life in prison or the death penalty, so be it. But I'm with LeDuc in giving the state that much power over life or death, because I really think that it is a power that can and possibly has been abused before.
Well, I think it definitely has been abused before, and it is always something we have to look out for. And with everything, when we're talking about government and the functions of government and how it works, it really comes down to the people we have in place. And if you have good people who you could trust, you're going to have good results. If you have people with poor ethics who you can't trust, you're going to have poor results. And that's just how it goes in life, no matter what. But on this, yeah, I think this guy should probably go down. I think I'd probably be for the death penalty going away in my state, but I think this guy probably needs to go down for his crimes as it stands under the law. And the other thing that I want to inject into this and ask a question on is, so if we kill someone through the death penalty, and that death is on all of us because the state acts in our stead, if we keep somebody alive and send them to college and provide them cable TV and all of this in a jail, are we really punishing them? And is it fair that the state, once again, is giving them all these things?
Yeah, it's fair.
By money?
No, because you're okay. Two things. You're taking away their ability to move freely within their county, their state, their country. Okay. Number two. When the left goes and says we need abortion because there are so many kids who are born that are starving, they put a dollar amount on that. I never, ever, ever want a dollar amount put on life.
Well, no, I don't mean a dollar amount put on life. I mean the amenities that we often provide in federal prisons for people on death row. It's crazy to me that we take money and spend it on anything beyond their basic existence.
Okay, but and that's a fair debate, but that's still a dollar amount. You're saying, oh, it's gonna. I mean, the argument it's gonna cost $45,000 a year to house this person in prison for the rest of their life. Okay, because they committed a crime against the state, society. That's the penalty that has to be paid. You forfeited your right to become a free member of society. Whatever that amount is, we can debate about, hey, get rid of the TV, get rid of the weight rooms, all of that. I have a problem, and this goes to the core of Obamacare. We have to cap how much can be spent. We have to make sure that X amount is spent only in these areas and everything. When the government starts dictating what life is worth in any amount, that really, it starts to make me want to hurl, just like looking at a picture of John Brodigan.
Right, and we should just so you know, Kelly just IM'd me and she's trying to get on, so we might be able to get Kelly on here at the end of this show to give us a little more info on. There she is! Look at her. There she is. Okay. Now I'm just waiting for my computer to let me actually get back where I need to be. So hey, Kelly.
She's muted.
You're muted.
Yeah, you're muted. It's the mute button.
You have to unmute you.
I'll
let you speak.
Hi!
Hey, there she is. Kelly, how are you doing today?
Learning experience. There's this thing happening about every afternoon, Aaron can tell you, in Colorado where these huge rainstorm and thunder and lightning storms have been coming in. And now for the second day in a row, it has taken power out, which has been a problem.
Very good. Well,
no,
so you know,
not good.
Well, yeah, but you're here now, so that's good.
I'm so glad. I've been frantically. I unplugged and I did the traditional IT saving my Wi-Fi. Unplug it. Plug it back.
Modem plugged in.
Yes.
All right, so let me go ahead and give you a quick briefing. We already did all of our ISIS stuff, so you missed out on all that. You don't have to talk about ISIS at all. We're going to keep it right in your wheelhouse. We were just talking about the death penalty and Governor Hickenlooper and everything that has been going on about that. So you wrote a great post this week on RedState, basically detailing all of this, all the information about this and Governor Hickenlooper, Nathan Dunlap, and the death penalty. So we got about 10.
Can you believe it?
I know. We got about 10 to 15 minutes left in the show, so I'm going to kick it over to you, and you go ahead and give your recap of what's up, and then we'll go into the questions a little bit.
All right. Okay. So essentially, what happened is there's one of the most prolific killers in Colorado history. Is a guy named Nathan Dunlap. In 1993, right before Christmas, he was fired from Chuck E. Cheese. He went back to his place of business with a gun. He ordered a sandwich, sat there and watched his coworkers, and then went and hid in the bathroom and waited for them to lock up. And as they were walking up, he walked back out of the bathroom with a gun, and he executed 4 of his coworkers and shot a 5th, believing he'd killed him as well. He was absolutely remorseless. It was really, I think a lot of people would consider him to have been kind of the embodiment of evil. He went through the entire trial process and was really completely remorseless, mocked the families, made faces at them. It was really, really terrible, and was given the death penalty. Unlike many other states, Colorado uses the death penalty very sparingly. In fact, we only have 3 people in the entire state sitting on death row right now. And so it's not like many other states where there's any question as to the innocence or guilt of the people that we have sitting on death row. And in fact, hearing Nathan Dunlap's jailhouse interview about it is one of the most disturbing things you'll probably ever hear in your life. So that's a little bit of background. We also have a very dynamic and long appeals process here in the state of Colorado. And Dunlap decided to use that entire appeals process. So he's been appealing now for 20 years. So his date of execution was finally set last May 1st. His date of execution was set for last August 18th, the week of last August 18th. And our governor, Hickenlooper, we all thought that he had 2 choices, which is to offer clemency, which is to commute his sentence to life in prison, or to allow that execution to move forward. The governor actually managed to find a little-known constitutional provision and has offered him what's called a temporary reprieve, meaning that he will not execute him as governor, but whomever follows him as governor could rescind the executive order and could allow it to move forward. So effectively, we have a guy who had a choice, which is allow it, not allow it, and he picked none of the above. He has drawn out the this question for the families, was as described by some of the victims' families, one of the most cowardly things that the governor could have done. And then our friend Todd Shepard over at CompleteColorado.com this week did some really great investigative work. He did an open records request. And sorry, I'll turn off my beeps. I was rushing to get over here and see you guys because you're my favorites. But so apparently CNN is doing a piece about this, which is going to be really interesting because it's Robert Redford and it is Susan Sarandon doing a thing about the Nathan Dunlap murder. So I'm sure it will be very fair. But in the interview with CNN, the governor said, they asked, well, I mean, effectively what the governor has done by making a non-decision is he's essentially made the entire campaign like, vote for me or this guy dies, right? So, and it's like, it's so disturbing. And so whether you're for the death penalty or against the death penalty, picking none of the above is like the most disturbing and I can't even, it's so gross.
The family member said it right when he said to the Denver Post that he views Hickenlooper as a coward. It was absolutely a cowardly move for Hickenlooper to do this. No matter where you stand on the death penalty, agree or disagree, you just simply say, well, I'm just going to leave it till the next guy, and don't you dare politicize that. It's politics.
The thing is that when Hickenlooper ran, he ran on, he said, yes, I support the death penalty in the most extreme cases. For those of us who have lived in Colorado more than 20 years, I won't tell you how long I've lived here, but it's all my life and it's more than 20 years. I know you totally can't tell, but for those of us who knew that Nathan Dunlap's all of his appeals were being exhausted, we knew when he said, for the most extreme cases, that means Nathan Dunlap. That's what that meant to people. Mm-hmm. And so we had a situation where now, during the CNN interview, they were asking him the very legitimate question, like, okay, so if this becomes a political issue, which he has made it a political issue, he has made the execution contingent upon his re-election or not, then how are you going to handle that? And Hickenlooper said, well, I could always grant clemency after I lose. That's paraphrasing. And so essentially
between the time of the election and the next January, when the next governor comes in office.
So he is using our ability to talk about a legitimate indecision part of his record hostage. Because if we talk about it, then he grants clemency and the families are essentially screwed. If we don't talk about it, the voters of Colorado miss one of the most critical examples of the governor's real indecision.
And, I think this is an important point to make here. The governor's indecision has been on every single issue.
Top to bottom. But when you think that you have two choices and you pick neither, like, that is, everybody, regardless of how you feel about it, understands the ramifications of that.
And I just want to point out that the governor's actual economic plan for Colorado when he became governor was actually called To Be Determined, TBD, because he really has no clue what he's doing. So that's the type of guy. And that's this. Let me draw a point. Kelly, just so you know, before you came on, Joe and I and Thomas were discussing the death penalty at large and whether or not we agree with it. Thomas is less of a believer in the death penalty. And this right here, Governor Hickenlooper's actions, are a prime reason why I have sympathy for Thomas and his views on the death penalty. You got a guy like Governor Hickenlooper who's taking a man's life in his own hands and playing a game with
it.
And,
who's Thomas? I only know LeDuc.
I'm sorry, LeDuc. But, LeDuc, this is kind of one of your issues with all of this, isn't it? The fact that the government, a man in the form of government, can go in and just make a decision and make it go one way or the other, either for the good or the bad.
Kelly, first I want to thank you for pointing out that he was calling me Thomas. Only my mom calls me Thomas because I tune.
Freaks me out, man.
Seriously, because I tune Aaron out, I wasn't even paying attention.
That's so mean.
Yeah, but I just the inconsistency here, and you can separate that out from what your governor out there is doing. That sounds like totally a boneheaded thing. He sounds like actually the president kind of on steroids. This guy wants to run for national office. After Obama.
Horrifying. He can barely find a declarative sentence.
If you want to make sure that he never runs for national office, all you got to do is go find the Men's Journal interview that he did and read through this. He is by far one of the dopiest, darkest, most oppressed governors in the nation, whose life has fallen apart probably because of his own ability to not make a decision. And when you read through the Men's Journal article of him, it's so sad that at the end he's actually almost begging the reporter not to leave, just so he has some sort of buddy to hang out with and play with around his kid.
So he's a community organizer in Colorado, you're saying?
He's a what?
He's a community organizer in Colorado?
Oh, he's worse than that.
He's actually a bartender and a bar guy by trade. I mean, originally a geologist and then became a bartender and did well with it and then became the mayor of Denver. I think the Men's Journal article is strange. And what I felt out of that, and like it's really a feeling article, I felt like he was very lonely. I've
dealt with
lots of oversharing, like way lots of oversharing. Like, let me tell you, I mean, we all work in politics, and sometimes we overshare, especially when we hang out together. But I'm not going to tell y'all about how happy I am that I found the joy of sex on my mother's nightstand. And he said that to a national reporter who subsequently wrote about it. And it's fine. Like, be quirky, be a whole person, be yourself. But there's being yourself, and then there's like talking about your mom's sex life. And there's just like a big gap.
And not only your mom's sex life, but the transition from saying that, like, oh, one of the happiest moments was when I found out that my mother was still having sex,
Dude.
And then going from that straight to, now check out this bar that I had these Hungarian girls sand
They were
down.
Ukrainians, like...
Ukrainian, whatever, Hungarian, Ukrainian, I'm no foreign policy expert.
Slavic.
Did
Did
anybody get a screen grab of Leduc's reaction face there? Because that was perfect. That entire conversation right there. Oh, man.
He gave us his grumpy cat look.
Oh, it was beyond that. It was. Oh, I've never seen anybody look that horrified on radio.
So, okay, let me just go back to Kelly here and we got to wrap it up. We're now in now.
Sorry, I jump on and then I totally.
No, it's great. It's great. It's great TV. Our ones of viewers are absolutely thrilled that you're on.
It is a holiday weekend.
Yeah,
We should all appreciate games.
Let me ask you the only question that really matters on this, as far as the politics goes.
Right.
How does it shake out? How do you think this episode shakes out in the Colorado race for governor, and how do you think that affects the down ticket races? Because I actually heard now that Hickenlooper's performing below Udall at this point. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have heard the same. Do you guys still hear me?
Yeah, you're playing.
I can't see you anymore, but whatever. Here,
Just go for it.
I have seen numbers. I think Colorado is definitely going to be a pickup year. Politically, the question is whether people like me, frankly, are intimidated by a governor who's essentially holding the conversation hostage. And I can tell you, I won't. I will still work for the next 9 weeks, making sure that Coloradans understand that Governor Hickenlooper's indecision affects people. I mean, I'm not going to allow this guy to tell me what I can and can't talk about his record on because he's holding the entire conversation hostage. I refuse.
Absolutely.
I refuse to bend to his intimidation tactics. That's unacceptable to me. And I think that the voters of Colorado deserve to know. I mean, the governor's chief of staff went to the sentencing hearing where they were setting the date of the execution and was tweeting about how barbaric it was tweeting about how making it a race issue. I mean, this guy admittedly went in and executed people and then bragged about it in jail. Like, horrible, horrible things. And I've really personally struggled with the death penalty, but after having the opportunity to really talk to some of the families myself, I will tell you that, like, I can't get in the way of what they feel they need for closure, number one. And number two, he ran on something. He told the voters that he believed in something, and everybody knew that he was going to have to make this decision. And whether or not his chief of staff threatening to quit, as written about in the Men's Journal article, or whether or not he really did learn more and change his mind, which I disagree. I don't believe that is in fact the case, because the facts of the death penalty haven't changed significantly from the time that he ran to the time that he made his indecision decision. So I think that the voters of Colorado deserve to know it, and I think, frankly, that the governor himself, by threatening the conversation with CNN, is the one that brought it back up to the voters more than any other political consultant like me could have.
I think you're definitely right about that.
Sorry, I have lots of things to say. You should not let me on these hangouts.
No, it's good. I think you're definitely right about that because the Denver Post didn't want to cover this story originally, and it wasn't until the stuff about the CNN audio came out that they had to focus on it, and that's what really makes it the biggest issue. In the forefront right now is it's by his own doing, but at any rate, I think you're right. I think we do have a chance to make Colorado a pickup state in the governor's race and quite possibly in the Senate race as well. And I think people ought to pay attention to what's going on here in Colorado more. We are the blueprint state that the left
I call us a harbinger state. We're like a
harbinger of doom. The harbinger of doom.
Yeah, or success. Like,
okay, hopefully success this year.
A to the G. Like, get happy.
I will try and be happy. I will try and be optimistic.
Like 9 weeks to prove the entire point, be the harbinger state, and save the entire republic. So.
And that's all. That's all. That's all that's on these shoulders. Just that.
Yeah.
No
pressure.
So, no pressure. As long as I got Kelly by my side, I know I'm good to go. Everybody, we are at the close of our show this week. We're going to go round table real quick and allow everybody to say who they are, where they can be found, and what it is that they do that makes it to where I want to bring them on this show. We'll start with you, Joe. Go for it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just saw that one of the leaked celebrity news today was of Kelly Upton. I was wondering if anybody told the Free Beacon yet. You can find me on Twitter at JoeC_Esquire on Twitter and at RedState on the front page occasionally.
Excellent. And LeDuc, where can we find you at, brother man?
I hate it. I got to follow Joe after that.
Hold on, I'm following him right now.
LeDuc at FTRradio.com. Bourbon on the Rocks, Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to noon.
Oh, speaking of Bourbon on the Rocks, real quick, I meant to mention this earlier. LeDuc and I, we had a great segment on Bourbon on the Rocks. We got together, we talked. It was a lot of fun. Everybody should go out and
Aaron froze.
And we lost Aaron.
And everybody should go and listen to whatever Aaron said.
Right, whatever it is. All I heard was bourbon, and I got lost there. So.
Yeah, Bourbon on the Rocks, which I'll have to have both of you on at some point too.
Yes. Do we get to drink bourbon on said rocks?
Yeah, it usually, Kelly, what we do is we ask what your favorite adult beverage is to start off the show.
Is all of them acceptable?
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to pick a favorite though, kid. You know what I mean?
No, that's like picking your favorite child.
Well, okay, look, we all know.
I don't have children, but I've heard that you love them a lot when you do.
Well, okay, then you just pick who you love more on that day.
Okay, well, I don't have to answer right now, right? Like,
No.
Okay, so we can wait. Like I can really consider these, like the finer points of what my favorite drinks are until I.
Absolutely. So. I guess, being that Aaron dropped off because Governor Hickencocker basically drove over to his house and pulled out his cable bill.
I'm pretty sure that he's well, I mean, except for the fact that you are strong enough to, send lightning into Denver. Like, I'm pretty sure that Hickencocker is.
Yeah, LeDuc, in the emails I accused you of being the reason she didn't have power.
Yeah.
So, right. Well, you know what? I've been accused of worse, I guess. Right.
Anyway, so this end.
Yeah. So yeah. Thanks everybody. I don't know if we're still live. It says we're live, but thanks everybody for tuning in to the Red State Weekly Briefing. I was your host, Aaron Gardner, until I grew 5 inches, and I got an incredibly deep voice. So I'm sure Aaron's going to love that part. Joe, thanks a lot. Kelly, thank you. Hey, and also thanks for a couple weeks ago keeping the cousin Fingers Malloy out of trouble. Basically.
Out, you mean?
Yeah. Well, what's that? Yeah. Well, you bailed him out of jail. You always have the bail money, I hear. So yeah.
No, I am good. I am always good for the bail money.
The bail money, yeah, that's right. Because I mean, let's face it. He's usually tripping over somebody, and then somebody thinks that he's a big biker bad dude, and the cops just throw him in jail.
Yeah, I think it's profiling.
Of course it's profiling.
I bet it's giant profiling, and I can say that as a giant. Like,
Listen,
I like big people.
he's 6'5" in heels. He's a dangerous individual. That's what I'm telling everybody.
Coincidence.
Yeah.
So am I.
Well, see, but you're supposed to be in heels. He's not really. That's another topic for another show.
All right, friends. Well, it's good to see you. Sorry that I was late.
That's okay. Sorry that Aaron dropped off because his wife is beating him right now. I guess we'll have another Red State Weekly briefing next week if our fearless host Aaron Gardner isn't being tortured right now by Governor Hickenknocker. So have a great rest of your Sunday and a great Labor Day, everybody, and take care.
Peace out, friends.